Hello and welcome to a Times special presentation. What you heard just now was Krishna devotees in Kherson, East Ukraine, singing bhajans as they distribute free food to Ukrainians. I am your host, Naomi Canton. Ever since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, our TV screens have been filled with images of bombarded buildings, death, and of desperate citizens fleeing their homes. What is the situation there like now? Is there any sign of the war ending? Is there any hope? We speak to Parashuram Das, an Irish devotee of Krishna, who left his comfortable life in London and spent this week travelling through East Ukraine, where the heaviest fighting is taking place. He took with him van loads of essential kitchen equipment, generators, food and spices, which he is delivering to local Ishkan groups who've set up field kitchens to feed Ukrainians. He is about to speak to us from Dnipro in East Ukraine, where thousands of refugees have ended up. Before this, he was in Kherson, which saw 64 strikes by the Russian army one day this week alone. This is an episode of Ground Zero, which brings to you the action live from where it's all happening. Paradas, it's a great pleasure to have you on this podcast talking to us from Ukraine. Let's start with Lviv. Is life completely normal in Lviv now?
It almost looks normal. There are rocket attacks from time to time, but it looks fairly normal. Like when we were there, the electricity was back on and people didn't have to queue for water. See, when the electricity goes out, then the water is not functioning either. So that was just what I noticed.
And so cafes and shops are open and people are going to work in Lviv.
Yeah, the refugees are now in the Dnipro area. There's 125,000 refugees in the Dnipro area. Before, everybody was in Lviv trying to get out of the country. And now it's just people in the local eastern area. They're all congregating in Dnipro.
Right. So what are you actually doing in Dnipro?
We're supplying food to all the refugees' shelters. There's many big industrial buildings have been turned into homeless shelters for these refugees. And because of the vehicles that we've given, they're able to go out, very brave cooks here. And they go out to the places that are actually under attack. So our headquarters is here where we cook the meals, but we're going out by vans to places that are in serious need.
And have you been on one of those trips?
Yes. I mean, yesterday we were in Kherson, and the queues for food is huge. You know, obviously everything we're cooking is prashadam, but the queues are very big, and it's mostly elderly people. All the young people have been drafted into the army or they've moved away. But elderly people are living there with their, they've lived there all their lives and they don't want to leave. They have their cats and their dogs and their families and they don't want to leave, but they're under heavy fire. And even when we were in the van doing the meals, just in between one location to another, the van was violently rocked by a rocket.
Were you in the van at the time?
Yes, yeah. Actually, 2 rockets came and shook the van, and we kind of realized we gotta get moving.
Can you tell me what the food is that you're giving to people?
Mostly, what the people like is borscht, which is basically a wet subji that has some beetroot in it, and they like a preparation called what they call grechka, which means buckwheat. So they like also very much rice, and they love halava, Actually, even in Turkey, that was a main prep that people loved, is halava. And also, it seems like a universal prep that people like all over the world. So people love Indian food. We don't make it very spicy because they're not used to that, but they love sabji, rice. And if you can do chapatis and halva, they love that as well.
Are the local Ishkan groups serving this every single day?
every day to serving, doing about every kitchen is doing about 2,000 meals a day, and over here there must be about 9 kitchens that we're supporting.
And so you actually brought out food and spices to these kitchens.
Yeah, yeah. I brought a lot of ovens and just big burners and pots that you can cook in large amounts, and also like the containers for loading the food into, and I got them very nice vans. They're cargo vans, meaning there's seating arrangement for 9 people and a place at the back for all the prasad.
Did you bring those 300-liter pots that you sourced in Agra?
Yes, yes, yeah. We got these huge pots in Agra, and they one pot can feed 4,000 people,
Wow.
and yeah, yeah, and you put a big burner underneath, and we have a system of cooking. We cook potatoes on the bottom, and you put your dal on top, and then you put your rice and your softer vegetables on the very top, and it cooks without burning.
I saw a video and there was some Hare Krishna music playing. So do you always have that playing as you're distributing the food?
Yes, we do. People like it very much. We do bhajans, we do kirtan, and it actually creates a nice atmosphere because people are. Can you imagine? Like sometimes I was counting up to 9 bombs a minute. So people are living with this, and then when the nice kirtan music is playing and there's prashadam and people are giving in a nice mood, they feel some relief from the madness of the war.
Now, how have you funded this trip?
Well, actually, most of my our funds come from the people from the music industry in England, from the rock and roll industry, from musicians. Many musicians are very spiritually inclined people, and they know what I do, and we play music together, and they help us. They do fundraising concerts for us, and in this way, we're able to support the struggling Ukrainians.
Can you name any of these rock stars?
Well, there's one person called Chrissy Hind from a band called the Pretenders, and so she's our patron, and she's very generous. And there's a few other groups there, Libertines. Um, Recently, there was a very big concert. There were 6,000 people attended. We played as well. There was a band called Killing Joke, and but we have other friends there like Paul McCartney, and we have friends, who are supportive, who would like to be there.
Now, back in July last year, two Ishkon devotees, as you know, were tragically killed in a rocket attack in the Donbass region of Ukraine after distributing prasad to farmers in the villages. Did that not put you off going back to Ukraine?
No, even at the moment, the wives of these devotees they are going out serving prasad themselves. It didn't even put them off, so it made us a bit more determined to help. So as soon as that happened, we sent another van out with money to repair the temple and to rebuild it, and the mayor stepped in and helped us get a new kitchen together. So it's a sacrifice that people make in life. In Sanskrit, it says "padam padam yavi padame tuisam," meaning there is danger at every step. So that's how the material world is, and we don't know what's around the corner. But if we engage in loving devotional service, then there's some um, auspiciousness that will be created, and in that way we just have to depend on the divine arrangement of where our destiny is going to take us.
So on this trip, which was the most dangerous place that you went to so far?
Well, it's always been Kherson. And even at the moment, the Russian army had moved into the temple in Kherson. Now, it's on the wrong side of the river, so they've left it, but it's still under sniper fire. So devotees haven't gone back there yet. So what we're doing there is we're cooking there's a house that has a swimming pool, and we've turned the swimming pool into the kitchen because the building won't collapse on you. and the rockets are going overhead, but it's a safe place to cook from. So these Hare Krishna devotees are very brave because all the other charities have left, and it's only them who stayed back to do this service.
So there's no charities in East Ukraine apart
No,
from.
no, there's some, but not in Kherson, not in the very dangerous places.
And how long were you in Kherson for?
Well, I usually only spend one day, but the devotees are spending every day. They're going out distributing the prasad every day.
What's the mood of the devotees?
They're really joyful, you know. They're just
Joyful.
absolutely joyful. They're just engaging in devotional service, cooking the meals, going out, doing kirtan, chanting, and in a happy mood. And I'm looking at these devotees thinking they're so transcendental to the what's going on, and they even tried to convince me that the bombs are a long way away, and so they're joyfully. Nobody's paying them. No, they're not getting a big wage to go out. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
And so when you were there, did you see there were rockets and bombs when you were there in Kherson?
Absolutely. It was sometimes it was hard to speak because of the sound of the explosions. And that's why it inspires you. When you see someone else doing this, you feel like, wow, I got to do something as well.
And the people there, who's left in Kherson then?
These are mostly elderly people, because if those who had the capacity to flee or had somewhere else to go to, they've long gone. Imagine it's so cold, and then they're getting free hot prashadam, and very tasty prashad, cooked on wood, and served with love. It makes a big difference to their life.
And you mentioned that you've noticed a difference on this trip compared to your last trip. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, people were rebuilding the roofs on their houses. Now, to be honest, it was basically putting up big blue sheets of tarpaulin where the roof had been, damaged. But basically they've moved back into their house. Now, I've got one minibus collecting people, bringing them back to the east. This is from one of my banker colleagues. He's driving the refugees. They're returning back to the war areas, and in some way trying to rebuild their houses.
And where is he picking them up from?
A lot of them are from Dnipro, who decide to go back. They don't have to go that far, but just having someone to bring all their luggage and bring it right to their house.
And they're going back to Kherson?
They are.
Wow.
There's a village outside Kherson. It was a village where a serious battle took place. It's in the middle of Dnipro and Kherson, and the houses were all smashed up. And we're getting the people are going back. The government are giving some tarpaulins and some basics to kind of repair roughly, to a basic waterproof roof on the house, and then they can do a proper job later. But no, people are going back. The war is kind of is mainly in the certain areas on the east, whereas before it was panic in Kiev, it was panic in Bucha, it was panic in Kharkiv, and but now the war. It seems to be really in that eastern side,
So it's safe for them to return to that village.
relatively safe.
In Kherson, were many of the buildings destroyed or just a few, or how
Well,
was it?
no, it's a little bit. Some of it looks a little bit like Stalingrad in the 40s. Some of it's completely wrecked, and somehow people are, they're just living there. They're living there. There's no the water. So it doesn't. They have to collect water, and there's no gas or electricity, so they're struggling. But things are improving.
And do the people see the war coming to an end anytime soon?
Well, the soldiers I speak to, and actually there's many, many Hare Krishna soldiers, because they're actually been drafted into the army. They didn't have a choice. But they're very convinced that in April or May, it could be over.
Why do they say that?
Well, I guess they're optimistic about defeating the Russians.
And you said your van was hit at, is that right?
Well, it was quite badly shook, but the thing about these rockets is you don't actually see them. You smell them, but you don't actually. It's not like they're leaving a trail and you watch them landing. They just come out of the middle, out of nowhere. Sometimes people think, well, we need to be part of an organization. We need to be part of some big group. But no, you just turn up and you just give a hand. There's so many people that need a hand, and you just turn up, start cooking, start distributing, and in that way, it's good for the people, but it's also good for ourselves because it softens the heart. And if our life is just about money and greed and materialism, we're not really living life. But we go out and we share food with the people, then it starts to affect our consciousness, and we can improve ourselves both internally and externally.
Right, well, thank you ever so much. That was London-based Food for All director and devotee of Hare Krishna, Parashuram Das, filling us in on the situation in Ukraine and why he feels compelled to keep going back and helping out. This is your host, Naomi Canton, signing out, but do keep listening to more Times special presentations for insights into everything happening across the world.